Chapter 2 Remix is finally here, and with a new season comes a brand new map filled with new, or I guess technically old POIs for me to rank. And so, of course, in today's video, I'm going to rank every single POI currently on the Fortnite Chapter 2 Remix map. Now, of course, there are going to be other POIs like the Grotto for Eminem and the Shark for Ice Spice that will be added later on in this season, so take that into consideration. I'm mainly going to be ranking these locations on where they are on the map, the amount of loot that you can actually get within that POI, so amount of chests, that type of stuff, and honestly, a little bit of my own bias, just how much I like that location and how much I'd prefer to land there. With that all being said, there are 16 named locations on the current Chapter 2 Remix map, so let's just get into ranking these. Be sure to use code TYFRYZ as always when you buy that battle pass if you haven't already, and let's get right into it. At the number 16 spot, the worst POI on the current map, to me, is Dirty Docks. Dirty Docks was one of those POIs we saw in the Fortnite Reload map last season. I don't think anybody landed there, and I was really praying this was one of the POIs they would not bring back to Chapter 2 Remix. I mean, there are just so many better locations they could have picked, but for some reason they went with this one. While it does have a decent amount of chests, a lot of those chests are in really tough locations and not areas that are easy to loot. It is also all the way at the end of the east side of the map, so good luck, get those running shoes on because you're going to be rotating to zone every single time. At the number 15 spot is Steamy Stacks. Honestly, the only reason why Steamy Stacks is one spot higher than Dirty Docks is because you actually have the stacks themselves, which can be used as basically a launch pad to glider, redeploy, and rotate. So you don't really have to worry about rotating to zone early because you have a launch pad there every single time, essentially. While I understand that this was one of the core first ever locations in Chapter 2 Season 1, and I understand why they brought it back, I don't think anybody is really super excited to land at Steamy Stacks. You're going to see a common theme here with these bottom couple of POIs. Honestly, just people don't like landing at the edge of the map. People want action. A lot of times you're not going to get that at some of these edge POIs, but not all of them. At the number 14 spot is Holly Hedges. Holly Hedges is actually a decent location. I actually do think that there are a lot of really good spots to land on this current map, and so unfortunately Holly Hedges just kind of fell to the bottom for me. If you think about it, it really is just like a smaller version of Salty Springs, really. And I do actually like the setup of this location where you have like the one brick shop building in the middle and then all of the houses kind of surround it. It does make for some pretty cool and unique fights, but honestly, there's nothing that really sticks out about Holly Hedges. It's just really another like suburban town. Like we've seen tens of these over plenty of maps. At the number 13 spot is going to be one of my personal favorite POIs from the Chapter 2 map. It's Craggy Cliffs. And I'm going to be honest with you, this is a 100% biased pick because if you look at Craggy Cliffs, you're going to see it's at the edge of the map. It is kind of difficult to loot sometimes. Like the buildings are not your typical Fortnite buildings like you would see at Holly Hedges, for example, or Salty Springs or retail. And it's really uneven. You have like multiple cliffs, obviously, hence the name, looking down on the POI. And so you can easily get third-partied here. The one advantage you do have to Craggy Cliffs, besides, I guess, being able to, fish a ton, is its close proximity to Pleasant Park. When I would land at Craggy, I would land there for a minute, get me my AR, my shotgun, my minis, my shields, whatever I gotta do, and then just rotate straight into Pleasant Park for action. It's also a quick boat ride away from the Doggpound, so I guess I'll give it that. At my number 12 spot is gonna be Weeping Woods. Now, Weeping Woods is kind of an interesting one because for me, it is a clear upgrade over Wailing Woods from the Chapter 1 map, but other than, the infinite amount of wood you have at Weeping Woods, I don't really see the attraction to landing here. It's dull, it's dark, it's pretty boring to be honest with you, and I guess that's obviously what they're going for. It has really minimal amount of chests. It has actually the lowest amount of chests for any POI up to this point in the list. You get like those kind of like main cabin buildings, and then after that there's like a couple smaller like wood shacks, and that's really it. Reason why it's higher than the other POIs I've said on this list so far is because of its location. It is incredibly close to Salty Springs and the Doggpound, and honestly those are the places where you're going to want to be rotating into to find action. Anyways, moving on to the number 11 spot, I believe this is going to be an incredibly hot take on this video. It's the yacht. So in terms of actual location on the Fortnite map, this is basically as bad as you can get besides the rig. You are extremely far out in that top northeast corner of the map. It is almost a guarantee 9 times out of 10 you're going to be booking it to zone. You don't really have that many chests on the yacht, but I guess you are literally like 20 steps away from Steamy Stacks. So, I guess most people would probably land the the yacht, land there for like a minute, and then just go straight into steamy stacks, use the stacks to rotate to zone, right? So it kind of makes sense. But I'm just going to say something. There is something so cool about landing on a yacht in Fortnite and looting it, especially when it was Deadpool's yacht. I mean, that thing was special. Obviously, there's a little bit of bias here because the yacht is honestly a fan favorite POI from Chapter 2, Season 2. I'm interested to see what you guys think about this pick. Would you have put it higher on this list? Would you have put it lower? Let me know in the comment section. I read all of them. At the number 10 spot is Frenzy Farm. And honestly, we have had so many farms in Fortnite history, and I would put Frenzy Farm somewhere in the middle of those. It is actually quite a large location, and the one thing that you are landing at Frenzy Farm for is honestly, well, its location. It is really as central on the Fortnite map as you can get to the Doggpound besides Salty Springs. So most of the time when you land here, you're not going to have to worry about rotating to zone, right? There is a good amount of chests, but they are very spread out. Since Frenzy Farm is not a small POI, it is quite large. And I think the one major disadvantage to landing at a central location of the map is those third parties are going to be brutal. You're going to have people rotating in from Dirty Docks, even from the Doggpound outwards, from Steamy Stacks, Pleasant Park. Everyone is going to rotate around Frenzy Farm, and so those third party fights are going to be brutal. But if you can survive them, you like the action, you like fending people off, you are going to come out with some incredible loot. Anyways, moving on to my number 9 spot on this list, it is Sweaty Sands. Sweaty Sands is kind of an interesting location for me to rank. I actually had a lot of trouble on where I wanted to put this because I think on one side, Sweaty Sands is essentially what Paradise Palms is. It's your beachy location. It's got your big, huge tower buildings. Then you got some of the small house buildings like the beach houses. And it has a ton of chests in a super small area. I definitely think it is better than all the POIs I have named up to this point, but I actually think Sweaty Sands is kind of mid. I just don't like it. I don't know how to explain it. To me, it just feels like the fights that happen at Sweaty Sands are always super weird and uncomfortable fights. Again, I really have trouble explaining it, but you might know what I'm talking about. Obviously, you are on kind of the edge of the map, but you are so close to Salty Springs and Pleasant Park that if you land here, you are not going to have any trouble finding action. It's a decent location, but I don't think anything better than that. At my 8th best location, I actually have Slurpy Swamps, and again, I think this is going to be a controversial pick. I'm always hearing both sides of the spectrum from people telling me that Slurpy Swamps is a awesome POI, you have to land there, and then half the people are telling me, no, Slurpy Swamp sucks. The one incredible glaring benefit that honestly pushes it so high on this list is you have the Slurp Water, which gives you health and shield. There is no other location on the map where you can do that. You don't even need to hold shield. If you get shot in a fight, just jump into the water. You can hide, and there goes all your health back up. It's actually incredible. When you drop Slurpy Swamp, you are never going to come out of there below 100 health, 100 shield. There are slurp barrels everywhere. Of course, you have the shield water, but that also means that your opponents who land there are also going to have a lot of health and shield, so you tend to get a lot of long, drawn-out fights at Slurpy Swamp. You'll especially get people obviously rotating in from the rig, and there's not a ton of chests at Slurpy Swamp. I mean, think about it. The POI itself isn't really that big. You have the one main factory and the couple of like garage looking shacks, and that's it. With that being said, I think the seemingly infinite amount of shield that is at Slurpy Swamp pushes it higher on this list. And at the number 7 spot, honestly, located right behind Slurpy Swamp, is the rig. And I gotta be honest with you, the rig has slowly been growing on me. When this came out in Chapter 2, originally, I was not a big fan of the rig at all. And half of me still does not like this location. I mean, the fights are honestly a nightmare on the rig because half the time you got people that are fighting actually under the rig in the water, and then half the people are fighting on top of the rig. TNTina is also just so annoying to fight. She's throwing grenades everywhere. She's got her explosive bow, which honestly isn't even that good. Like, not good to the point where you'd want to go out of your way and try and take her down, because let's be honest, as soon as you hear somebody shooting TNTina, you just book it and you third party them. But the other half of me absolutely loves the rig for its theming. Like, you actually do feel like you are on a oil rig in the middle of the ocean. While the music can sometimes get a little bit annoying, I'll be honest with you, it's unique, and there's not many other POIs where you're going to land there and you're going to be having music in your ear constantly. Obviously, the glaring issue, just like the yacht, is honestly where it is actually physically located on the map. It is so far in that bottom left-hand corner of the map that you are never going to get zone here. But I know a lot of people actually really like the rig, so I think you guys will enjoy this pick. At my number 6 spot is actually Salty Springs. I did not expect to put it outside of my top 5, but here it is. Look, I totally understand that Salty Springs is a classic location, but I'm just kind of getting bored of it. Like, I guess there's not really a problem with it being boring, but there's no real excitement to landing at Salty Springs. You know what I'm talking about? now. I mean, we've been dropping there since, 6-7 years ago. With that being said, I think the pros of Salty Springs heavily outweigh the cons. You have a ton of chests in, honestly, a really tiny area. You know you're going to land at Salty Springs to get action. You're right next to Pleasant Park. You are right next to the Doggpound, literally as close as you can get to the Doggpound. So if you want action, you want fights, you're going to go at Salty Springs, right? Absolutely. There's no denying that it's still a top tier location. I don't know. I'm just kind of getting bored with it. At the number 5 spot is Pleasant Park. And a lot of the sentiments that I just said about Salty Springs, I share with Pleasant Park. It's just that we keep getting this same location over and over and over again. I've literally landed at Pleasant Park thousands of times in my life, especially in Fortnite Reload 2 last season. Pleasant Park was there, so it just keeps somehow coming back. Again, just like with Salty Springs, this is still a great location, an iconic Fortnite location. There's a reason why it keeps coming back, right? It's because people love landing here. I think the one disadvantage to landing at Pleasant Park is it's just incredibly open. Obviously, you have like the soccer field in the middle, and then all the houses are around it. So as soon as you leave one of those houses and start moving to the middle of the POI, you are 99% of the time going to get into a fight. And the loot is quite spread out. I mean, at least on the side behind the soccer field, it's really tough to find some of those chests. But once you land at the house's side, they're all pretty close and you're going to get a decent amount of chests. But I do think there is one of the core OG POIs that is actually better than Salty Springs and Pleasant Park at the number 4 spot. It is Retail Row. Again, I know I sound like a broken record here, but I got to say it again. It is a old POI. It has literally been in the game for 7 years. It was just on the Fortnite Reload map. It is now back for Chapter 2 REMIX. I'm getting a little tired of landing at the same locations over and over and over again, but out of all those OG locations, Retail Row is certainly my favorite. I really like how it's split into like the houses section and then the retail section. So you pick one of those sections to land at, and then you're going to fight the people who landed at the other side of that location. And Retail Row is absolutely loaded with chests. A lot of the chests are super easy to get, and that's also because we've been looting this same location for years and years now. So everybody knows where all the chests are spawning. It is a high intensity POI almost every time, but its location kind of sucks. It is far out on the map and you're gonna have to rotate a lot. And now we have cracked the top 3. These are 3 elite locations this season, and honestly, I would argue that probably 30 to 40% of every single game are convoluted into just these 3 locations. Maybe even more, honestly. And at the number 3 spot is Lazy Lake. I am so glad that they decided to bring Lazy Lake back in Chapter 2 REMIX, and I think there's an argument that Lazy Lake is almost kind of like the Tilted Towers of Chapter 2. There are so many chests at Lazy Lake, it's almost insane. It is such a tightly packed POI. You have so many chests, so many houses all crammed together in this tiny area, and that makes for a ton of fighting. And the thing I really like about this location is it feels fresh again to land here. I'm not bored of landing at Lazy Lake because we have barely seen this POI since its inclusion in the original Chapter 2. You know that if you land Lazy Lakes, you are going to fight at least 4 or 5 people there, and that's what you want a lot of times, right? At least for myself, I like to fight. I don't like to loot in the corner for 20 minutes and then rotate and just die right away. But just one spot edging out Lazy Lake by a little bit. This is an entirely biased pick. I totally acknowledge that. The number 2 spot, of course, it's Misty Meadows. I absolutely love Misty Meadows. I have been waiting years to land back at this location. I would say 90% of my drops in Chapter 2 REMIX, besides the other POIs, have strictly been Misty Meadows. There is just something about this location that I love so much. I love how it's split by the street in the middle. You have half the people will land at one side, half the people will land at the other side. It just feels entirely different than any other location we've ever had in Fortnite. Maybe besides Happy Hamlet, it's almost identical to Happy Hamlet, at least the buildings are. I totally acknowledge that this is a biased pick, but I know there are so many Misty Meadow enjoyers out there, so I think you guys are going to be happy with this decision. So many chests in such a great area. I know it's kind of towards the bottom of the map, but you're right next to Lazy Lake. You also have that big lake in the middle where you can fish if you want to. I know some people used to land there back in the day. I absolutely love Misty Meadows, and I'm kind of surprised I didn't put it at the number 1 spot. But it should honestly be obvious what the number 1 spot is right now. I mean, just do kind of process of elimination here. It is absolutely the Doggpound. I 100% acknowledge that I was a little bit skeptical of, taking fan favorite locations like the agency and then reworking them into essentially a collab location, let's be honest. But I really love how they did the Doggpound, where at its core, it is literally the agency. It has the same exact shape. All the buildings are the same. If you remember looting the agency, it is looting it the exact same. but the aesthetic is totally really pimped out in gold. You have his cars all over the place. You get the cool music when you land there, and obviously the most important is you get the drum gun. And if you don't know by now, that mythic drum gun that is dropped at the Doggpound actually has the stats of the pre-nerfed Midas's drum gun. That is a massive deal. That is one of the strongest weapons in Fortnite history. The agency is one of my favorite locations of all time. I would argue probably a top 10 location of all time, so it's no surprise that the Doggpound is seemingly beloved by so many people. And you know what you're getting here. You're always going to get high intensity fights. You're going to be here for 10 minutes at a time fighting. You're going to get zone almost 90% of the time, and everybody on the map at some point is looking to rotate into the Doggpound. So you better get that loot, get that drum gun, and get out of there because you are going to get third-partied. But I don't think there's going to be a ton of debate on this in the comment section below. I think the Doggpound is currently the best location on the Fortnite Chapter 2 Remix map. Well, alright guys, that is my ranking for every single location currently on the Remix map. Now, of course, in a couple weeks, we will get Eminem's location, of course, that being the Grotto, and Ice Spice's location, that, of course, being the Shark. So, obviously, those are not featured on this list, but if you want me to remake this video at the end of the season, I can absolutely do that. Let me know in the comment section below what you think of this ranking, and leave me some video suggestions down below of what you'd like to see me rank next. But with all that being said, be sure to drop this video a like if you went on to enjoy it, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.